Welcome back to the Women in Movement podcast. We're here with KD, who is a movement practitioner in New York City, a performer as well. KD, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm an unapologetically versatile movement specialist. That's how I refer to myself, because versatility. I work in education and movement arts, mostly dance and aerials. I started dancing at age 3, went to North Carolina School of the Arts in high school for contemporary dance, moved to New York City at 18. I had quite the epic life dancing, choreographing, and performing, a lot of independent studies, indie work, and off-Broadway. And I'm formally trained in first-generation Dunham technique from the Dunham School, New York City lineage. My mentor was Ned Williams Jr. I became a mother in my early 20s, and I have 2 incredible, beautiful, insanely talented, and phenomenally intelligent children. My background outside made a career out of it. I began working in choreographing and aerials at that point, and a large part of my life is literally turning the world upside down. I've taught around the world across both ethnic and movement cultures, and continue to do so. I've had many titles throughout the years. I've always embodied the language of movement arts. I had to. It's how I've made sense of things, sense in quotes, or I've attempted to. And I'm based in Brooklyn, baby. So that's the short of it.
Nice. Welcome. We're excited to have you here. So you did say that you were dancing since age 3 in the Dunham technique. Can you speak a little bit on that technique or your experience with that dance?
Yeah. So dancing since age 3 is more like growing up down south, dancing ballet, tap, jazz, like that typical kind of routine of things. And then I got bored as a teen, very young teen. Well, actually around like 12, 13. I got really bored. And so when I would get bored, I'd just do something else. And so I started doing tap on point and jazz on point. It gave me more studio time and just more creative time. And I mean, doing that young was really fulfilling. And then went on to modern dance, like I said, School of the Arts. So it's like very Graham, North Carolina School of the Arts was very Graham based. Choreography, floor work. So I got a bit deeper into different movement styles, kinesiology. I also went to the American Dance Festival really young too. And that was amazing. Being able to work so young with so many phenomenal people. At that point, Dunham was introduced into my life because my uncle was a photographer for Channel 13 here in the city. So he did the still photography for the Dance in America series. So I basically grew up with his photographs as my dance education. Right? It was like, you know, he'd be like, here, and there's just files, and, you know, we're looking at light tables, and, you know, he'll just throw photos across the room. So that was like, you know, a lot of Russian ballet companies, well, not just from the Dance in America series. Paul Taylor, Twyla Tharp, Baryshnikov, who else? I mean, so many, I'm blanking. And then I remember he was like, so you want to really see dance? And he started bringing out all his Dunham pictures and just talking, because I got to hear his stories. So I got to hear his stories behind the lens of all of these experiences too. And so through his photographs, I learned about Dunham technique and also just arts and culture of New York City in general, like Warhol or even around the world, Sophia Loren, you know, James Baldwin. I learned about all these artists as activists. I saw it really young too. So really immersed into that. And then Dunham came through with that. And then also while I was at the American Dance Festival, Catherine Dunham was being honored there. So the Dunham started kind of coming into my life. And then it wasn't until, I was in the city, so like mid-90s, I would take some Dunham classes. Joan Peters at Ailey. There were a couple other teachers here and there in the city. And I loved it. I mean, the rhythm of anything, it makes a lot of sense to me because as a tapper or just, you know, I grew up in nature. And so my feet were always like in the earth and like running and pounding, and there's something about rhythm across the board of everything I do that, you know, it's like that's what draws me in, whether I'm grounded or the transcendence of it all. And so then Dunham, I got more serious about it after like 1999, and I was so tired of the city. I was so over the weather. Like, I love the city. I've had a great life in the city. I mean, obviously I'm still here, so it keeps bringing me back. So I was like, I'm going to leave the city. I'm going to find a teacher in Dunham. I moved to New Orleans because I love New Orleans so much.
And the tapping there too.
Oh yeah, everything, like everything. I also have an amazing dance colleague from New Orleans too. It just feels good. There's a lot in the cells of my body that are like, so I just love New Orleans. So I moved there in early 2000 to try to find a teacher, and there was actually a Dunham intensive randomly there. So I got to take classes with the amazing Theo Jameson, Keith Tyrone Williams, who would later want me to demonstrate for him, which was an honor. I was pretty young still, and so that was happening in New Orleans, but it was like an intensive. So I didn't find a teacher in New Orleans, which I was really sad about. And then I ended up going to the Dunham seminar in East St. Louis in 2000, Catherine Dunham and Vinoy Akins, and at that point, Catherine Dunham told me to teach her technique, and I was like, wow, okay, I don't know what to really do with that right now because I'm still looking for a teacher. So, and then I came back to the city, of course, because, New York does that to you, and kind of pulls you back in. And it's like, girl, you're home here too. And so at that point, I found my mentor, Ned Williams Jr., who, like, his bio doesn't stop. We could do a whole podcast on Ned. He was known to be really cutthroat, like brutally honest, so demanding. People would leave the class in tears. He was awful. He was a genius. And so I learned so he went to the Dunham School in New York City, which, to give that some credit, the Dunham School, it's not just about dance. There's scholars, it's writing, it's artists, it's activists. Some of the most phenomenal talents, dance styles, Broadway dance styles, Fosse, like all these ways of being, ways of doing, whether it's in the dance world or acting and activism, scholarly pursuits. A lot of it stems from Dunham and how well-rounded that curriculum was. It wasn't just dance. The dance was really, really demanding and rigorous. And so coming from the Dunham School lineage, it's often, there's like, word on the street is like, you're going to get hurt if you do Dunham because it's so hardcore and it's too much on your body, and like on and on and on, which is true if you don't train, right? And you aren't dedicated, disciplined, committed, all of those. At the same time, I knew another side of Ned who was incredibly compassionate, loved what he did, so passionate about the body knowing what's going on. So it wasn't just like do, so often in movements, like just do this, do that. Kind of like trick-based, pole example, or trick-based aerials. It's like, just do this and do this and do this. And it's like, so often the how isn't there. So the how is always very important to me, and that's where the like versatile biomechanics and approach to the body and in multiple ways is a passion of mine as well. But also why, it's like he had the why to it. So I really learned, the short of it is I learned how to preserve the body through first generation Dunham technique, which is pretty rare. So that's that's the knowledge that lives inside of my body. That's the lineage to that degree too. It's pretty powerful. So that was, Dunham is, a part of my life still. I teach at a studio called Kumbay sometimes here in the city, and I teach at Ailey when they need me. And I love it. I love rolling up to Ailey because I just get to roll in and teach. Nice. It's like, boom, we're on. And there's a lot of information in my body still that needs a place to go. In Dunham, we'll see where it goes or not. But it always informs a lot of, what I do and how I do. Also, pelvis and undulation, right? That's like very Dunham. Yes. Rhythm, pelvis, undulation, which segues into other things we're going to talk about too.
Yeah, I'm excited for those conversations too. And there's a lot that you just said in that statement. But I think the cool part was that you stated that you always return to rhythm, and rhythm is something that's so naturally driven in our body. Some of the first things that we develop in the embryo is your vestibular system to hear rhythm. So it's it's very innate. It also helps you remember things, or there's just so much in there, which is really cool that you always stated that you return to rhythm. I also remember going to New Orleans for my cousin's wedding, and we were just walking down the street, and I saw these kids that had smashed up these Coke cans, and they were tapping with the Coke cans on the bottom of their toes. And I was like, this is just magical. This is just making something out of what you got and like bringing the rhythm to your street and your city. And it was just, I thought it was so beautiful. Also, like I have my background in dancing. The only dance I've ever done is Irish dance. So
there you have it.
Yeah, there's the rhythm in there.
The rhythm in there, for sure. That's like some crazy rhythm too.
Yeah. And like, even though Irish dance, like we were very much arms to the side, that has a root there, based on not portraying dancing in a window. So, your feet were moving, but your arms weren't, because we weren't allowed to dance. But like my teacher would also have us sit in a circle, and we would be doing the movements with our hands, and we'd still be making the rhythm with our hands on the ground.
Nice.
So it's just like all those things, these are just cool examples of rhythm and how the body receives and learns through that. I also think it's really cool that you stated that the Dunham technique was about more than just dance, but also activism and just scholarly stuff, because movement can be so useful with scholarly achievements. And hopefully we'll get to a point in which our school systems and the public school systems encourage movement more within that. But do you have any like cool examples of maybe like an activist or activism project within the Dunham school?
There are so many. So the curriculum in and of itself, when I did a lot of independent studies on Dunham technique in the city, like through the Performing Arts Library, and just being around Dunham elders and the lineage here in the city, and that oral communication on passing knowledge and passing torches, as well as being involved deeper in Dunham studies through organizations and things too later. So what got me though was in the book Kaiso. I'm a visual rememberer, so I'm kind of going back. I was at the Performing Arts Library, I was looking at this book, and I came across the curriculum. And at that point in time, I wasn't working in the education and movement arts or doing curriculum, which we'll get into other curriculum and movement arts stuff later. And I came across a Dunham school curriculum for a 1.5 year program or a 2 year program. And there was a path for theater and there's a path for dance. And it all you had to do music classes, you had to do language classes. So there's the intercultural communication, because Dunham technique is also dance anthropology. So Catherine Dunham was an anthropologist and did a lot on African diaspora dance and rituals and ways of preserving self through some pretty horrific things, and erasure of culture and ways to preserve it or take it from here and move forward in a more progressive way, I guess, which obviously is not my lineage. I'm Scottish, Irish, Appalachia, so I stick to the dance in those capacities. At the same time, being able to learn and all these things at play. So you have the curriculum of, like I said, languages, music. You would have somatics to a degree. So in theater, somatics. I learned somatics through theater and dance. Right now, it's a big trend word on this and other capacities. You would have all of writing. So as you would have to go into some of Ned's stories. He would sit around. Him and Marlon Brando were really close. And he would talk about, he was a great drummer. Everybody knew him as this, actor, and he was a great actor too, of course. Good looking man, and he was a great drummer. He was the best drummer, and so everybody I think was really versatile. You learned all about production. So in the Dunham School at that point in time, you had Eartha Kitt, you had James Dean, you had Marlon Brando. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And to give them a couple of examples, and then I'll give Catherine Dunham a couple of examples, and then everybody can just kind of take it and run, go down rabbit holes and research. Example, Eartha Kitt was invited to the White House for a dinner, and she started protesting the war at the table. Wow. And that's whenever, she was blacklisted after that. Then you have Marlon Brando, who stood up or accepted an award at the Oscars and stood up for indigenous rights and recognition and representation in theater and movies and film, and just as people as well, for First Peoples awareness. And so that artists using their platform dynamic really, I think, stemmed from the Dunham School. Catherine Dunham herself was a African-American woman who had a company and everybody was paid. They were traveling the world, and this was in the 40s, the bulk of it. I mean, extensions before and after, however, that, kind of bulk of it. And she would, I think one of the biggest ones that people could find information on is they did a program called Southland, and it was very honest about what was happening in America. And there was a lot of lynchings, and they did a lynching on stage for this show. And at that point, it was in South America. At that point, the U.S. government got involved because Hoover administration did not like that, and started revoking their passports and trying to financially break down the company. And because it's like tactics of abusers, right? It's like pretty textbook. As awful as it is pretty textbook. And it's like how can you break someone down that's that powerful? And she was doing it from the space, to my knowledge, of bringing awareness, because Western propaganda was a really big, a big thing to present the West as one thing when something very different was happening in reality. And so they were pretty fearless, and not even pretty fearless, they were fearless in putting what was really happening out there. And like example, in the States, they would go and be performing like down south. And I think at one point she came on stage. I think because I couldn't remember. I can't think it was Kentucky. But she came on stage and there was segregated audience, and she said, "We'll never perform. We won't go on stage until my people can sit, amongst everyone." And the Dunham School itself in the 40s and 50s here in New York City was integrated. So there were a few dance companies that were like, "Nah, we're all doing this together," and we're doing it. They obviously did it in the dance anthropology way of African diaspora, and a lot of Black power movements came from that development of self, we'll say, that stemmed from the Dunham School, and how she did things that, it wasn't just dance. Dance is also a way of communicating, right? It's a way, and rhythms, right? Yeah. These are the things that have been able to carry through. So those are some examples.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay. I think that's really cool, because it also makes me think about sports and activism as well, because sports teams, especially the WNBA, which the WNBA, I feel like the women have just this cohesiveness amongst the whole league that isn't really, and the women's soccer league as well, where they find a project and they'll work on it together, and it usually is for some form of social justice that's in need. And I think it's also because there's such an integration of races, of just gender, just gender identities. And I think that like movement helps to bring people to a common ground of understanding that really hits on a deep level and allows for people to really connect and like feel for when another person is, in need of whatever help or assistance, another group. So I think it's cool to hear about something from the dance world, because I'm not as familiar with that, but there are connections, I think, throughout sports. So my father was a football player and a coach, so I grew up in sports too. My kids, soccer, karate, they're sports kids. I'm mad that I didn't make them dance more at this point. I'm just like, there was no time. But to the point more so that arts and athletics have always, for me, been a way to transcend a lot of societal constructs that keep us divided. And it's a way that, at least through dance and theater, and I mean, Lower East Side indie theater, a lot of that for me was, storytelling. And the more you learn, the more you hear everybody's stories, and people, whether it's artists that are, there was like a time, and maybe it still happens, I don't know, but there was a time where it's just like, as a young artist myself, it's like I just had to get out, like I had to bust free or whatever those things are. And that's, New York City was a destination, I think, for a lot of us kind of misfits, if you want to say, to come and really do the thing. And whenever you're up in it and you're doing it and you're living it and you're breathing it, there's an element of like, everybody's together in this to some degree. And
and arts and athletics, they've always both done that for me. I think because of how my father was also in athletics, as a coach, and he would, help kids get work and help kids get scholarships to college to play ball. And, they'd be like, I remember my parents and my sister, my family, getting dorms together for kids and driving kids up. And it wasn't from some weird white saviorism space at all. It was from just like this root of it where it's like, you're amazing. Don't let society, tell you any different. And if it is telling you different, because let's face it, it's going to, destroy the narratives. Do your thing and have support in ways that, you might not have it, but if you can, you do. And they did. And so, and also from seeing my father as, I remember looking through his, I guess like were the annuals? Is that what they're called? Like the picture books from schools? Is it annual? What are they called? I just totally blank.
Yeah, they're yearbooks. Yeah.
Yearbooks.
Yeah. Well, that's what we call it.
Yeah, yearbooks. What is annual year? I don't know.
Yeah.
Annuals. And, everybody was like together in these schools even then, and that was like the 60s, 50s, 60s. And, they're all on the same team together.
Right.
They're all like on the field getting plummeted, and, that's the whole other part. I think I mentioned this when we were talking before too. Like, I'm like, they're all kind of getting concussions together. They have something in common. Not to make light of that, but it's like, there's a realness and a grit to it that where everybody comes together in arts and athletics, I think, have the ability to transcend a lot of societal constructs and systematic racism that, it's not fun to be in. So
yeah. It's definitely interesting to look at and to look at how those programs can impact society in general. I think it's like just very important. I've worked for the city for 9 years, and I think that just like bringing all these communities together at different levels, whether it was like borough-wide or city-wide, getting people into different experiences and letting them know what's out there, but also letting them like proudly represent their communities. It's just a wonderful way to do that in such a relaxed environment, or like a playful or even competitive games can be playful in many ways. Yeah, and fun. And those are where like the memories stay, and you're like, oh, like, you remember certain things about certain communities and their culture, and it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay, so let's go into a little bit also, where have you taught? So you said you taught worldwide, like different places. So can you just like list off some of the places that you taught in?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've taught around the city, so that even feels like a world in and of itself, right? I've taught in the city since the 90s. In the States, I've taught East Tennessee University of Mississippi, North Carolina some, Salt Lake City, California, and then around the world, more so through anti-gravity when I was a master instructor for them. I taught in Greece and Singapore, Thailand a lot. I used to commute to Thailand.
Wow.
Yeah. My commute to Thailand was like my A train.
Wow.
It was a lot. It was beautiful. It was amazing. Also jet lagged for like 8 years straight.
Oh my gosh.
While raising kids on the road and, here in the city. And then where else? Italy. I love Italy. I still go back to Italy and Jakarta in Indonesia, Bandung, Indonesia, Switzerland.
Nice.
And then, I think I'm like wrapping my head around it. I mean, that's the kind of the short of it. What was cool though is that example, I could have a training, because I was holding teacher trainings for anti-gravity as those programs were extending, which we're going to get into a little bit more later. And I could have a training let's see, I'll give this example. So I held a teacher training in Switzerland. I had about 17 people in this training. And they were from different countries in Europe. And so, as well as like different verbal languages, as well as different movement languages. So we typically had, the dancer, the yogi, the gymnast.
Yeah.
And the Pilates person. It was always kind of like they're around. Aerialists, we'd have I had that particular training. I had a doula.
Wow.
I had a sports medicine psychologist that worked with Olympian champions.
Beautiful.
There would be like professional like BMXers, you know, and surfers and Muay Thai and MMA, and you know, we'd all be together in it. Again, back to that, like, and we're all together in this, you know, from all these walks of life and all these ways that would say, like, you're not supposed to be together, or that doesn't work, you know, or something like that. It's like, it does. And the beautiful thing would be, not only was it new, so it was like, you know, getting people upside down in aerial hammocks, whether it was, you know, our fundamentals program at the time, or it was aerial yoga, or it was suspension fitness, or Pilates. I mean, there's so many, restorative, like there's so many programs that we ended up. So my job for anti-gravity also was curriculum director. So as aerial yoga was taking off, kind of in the world, that we'd already kind of had our time in it, right? Because they launched at Crunch in 2007, 2009, it became public. And then from 2009, I came on in 2011, and my job was to deconstruct the curriculum to make it multi-genre offerings. So 2011 is really, I mean, a little bit before, but like that was really the pop off of like yoga and fitness and open level classes and like all this spinning. Like it was just like this like boom and like craze. And aerial yoga was coming into the world more so like as the trend then. And I was deconstructing it from aerial yoga into multi-genre offerings because we know how powerful the benefits are. So I would be around the world holding these teacher trainings and doing this curriculum. So in multiple genres more so than just aerial yoga. But that's how a lot of people know of it as. So I'm always kind of in this like strange space of like, it's not aerial yoga, but that's how you know it. But it's not. It's so much more than what that is and what that became. You know, I've seen a lot out there on the road, I'll put it that way. So yeah, and I'd have a lot of people that would come through because they wanted to open studios, or maybe they were leaving finance and wanted to start moving, right? So yeah, that's an example of around the world, you know, and then across ethnic cultures too. What I love about what I do is I come in and I'm oftentimes more so working with locals to just like do your thing, you know. There were times where they were trying to get, I would be getting offers. I would be getting offers. Let me speak clearly. There were times I would be getting offers to do things. I'm like, but you have the most amazing local instructors. Like, you don't need me. I would talk myself out of gigs because I'm like, you have, like, everybody's phenomenal. Why do you want, you know? Yeah. And then that, you know, that expat teaching and whatever. I'm doing quotes in my hands right now in the air, and people can't see the air quotes. I can't stand the word expat for teaching in the yoga world and all those dynamics. And it's just like, nah, like, you have amazing talent here. Like, just bring us in. And I say us because it was like a handful of us that would come through, and we all had like these very different, unique qualities to bring to it, you know? And it's like, just bring us in and out. Like, we'll come train you, and like, I don't need to live here, you know? I don't need to like be some like expat teacher. That doesn't interest me. What does interest me is like being able to give people whatever they need, and whatever I can share, whatever knowledge has been passed to me, I can pass on as well, so that you thrive and your culture does it the way you want to do it. Not, you know? And it's still, it's movement arts. It's also aerial hammocks. So what I was getting to before also is that it was new to everyone. So not only was it a new movement form in terms of like movement and dance and aerials, it was new because it's so accessible. That's intentional. So it came from performance athletes taking care of their bodies. Because Anti-Gravity was one of the first aerial companies to like do New York City nightclubs and all that, like back in the late 90s. And so, and performing and corporate gigs, I mean, just big aerial company, gone into this yoga and fitness world of things. And so the techniques come out of performance athletes taking care of themselves, like world champion performance athletes taking care of themselves. So the accessibility was very intentional. It was an adjustment going from teaching, like I always taught when I did teach prior to this, it was always performance athletes, performance artists, you know, professionals in their fields, like through dance and other like somatics and movement. And then getting into this was like, it was so accessible. Everybody was doing it. And it's like non-movers. Like I said, I'd have a finance person that was just changing their life and wanted to come and do this. And I was just like, So
Yeah.
I say regular people, and I mean that in love. I don't mean it as like putting anybody
Just
down.
general
It
public.
was just different,
Yeah.
And it's just like, whoa, non-movers are moving, and it's beautiful. Like it was amazing. The thing though, still to try to get to is that this point of it being so new to not only as a movement forum, also as it's new to the body. Mm-hmm. It was new to our bodies being upside down 8 hours a day in training days, off airplanes and upside down. And because you're demoing, and what I love about teaching it, which I'll get into a bit more too, is it's not like teaching any other movement form, because you have to be a visual reference point for people because they're disoriented.
Right.
You're upside down. Your body's never done that before. Your mind's never done that before. Your energetic body is like, what? Your somatic body is like, who? It's a lot. It's a lot. Like even that just in and of itself, I think, is an entire research study of just how new to the body these ways of moving and how multidimensional it is as a movement form. Well, that's why I liked it too, because I'm just like, it's on. This is amazing, and it's new and it's different, and so, and I also I was healing my own injury at that point too, so it was helpful.
Yeah,
it was helpful. A little burnout, I'm not gonna lie, after a while. So, and I still do it. So, I mean, COVID obviously took a hit. I was dealing with losing all of my work. During COVID, but in January before it even hit here, and then was here. So it's a slow build for me, at least, in terms of getting, teaching back in the world again. But it's fun. I love it. It's I've got a lot of great, colleagues, people I respect and love dearly, and the salt of the earth is peoples around the world too, across cultures. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I very much love how you said that you would be in a space and you'd be like, but you already have the people you need here. Like, you're just gonna come in, give the information you feel necessary, and then work with the person to see how does it fit into your culture and what their needs are, because that's always important. If you can't fit it into your culture and your needs, then what's the purpose? And then you can move on to go teach someone else, the basics or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's super important. I think a lot of times people just walk into a situation and they don't assess things first, or they don't respect the culture of the space enough, or ask enough questions about the person's day or what they typically do before they're just like, you need to do all these things, and you're like, but you don't have respect for the place or the environment or the food, anything that is going on in this person's life. And I think it's beautiful that you said that, you also say resource from your people, they're going to be the ones that know how to translate it to the culture the best. And it's so cool that this modality can be taken into so many different spaces, whether it's BMX, which is there's lots of injuries there, or the Olympics, where they're definitely injured and working and competing through injuries, or even spaces like doula, where you're something that people don't consider an injury, to the body, which is an injury to the body. And I think that it's a very cool practice to be able to help people work it into their life and their communities.
And not just injury. I mean, it's very injury. There's prehab and rehab with these with the hammocks. That's out of this world. But also support. So as a mom with my SI joint injury, the first time I leaned back into the hammock, I just brought my legs wide and just squatted in a Dunham second, we'll say, that's the position. And I was just like, oh my God. It's if I had this, I'd have more babies. Of course, thank goodness I didn't. I love my kids, but I'm good. And then I was in the hammock at the end of classes, we cocoon, you're swaddled in it. Or I just nap in it at this point now. And I remember my first class, just laying it. In my first class, I went upside down and I got relief in my back when I was being tested for MS. I was told, I needed back surgery, and they were just going to quote unquote suck the disc out. I was like, I can't do this. I can't. There's got to be something else.
Yeah.
And I was swaddled in the hammock, and it was like I was held as a mom. I was held, and I just cried and released. And I'm not a big crier. I cry more now, I guess, as I'm older, but I was like never a big crier. I was just like, go. Yeah. It was like very hardcore. And moving energy and energetic mover, but like it was so moving, and it is because I was supported. So the support, whether it's, in injury prevention, as well as like visualization. I do a creatives and visualization session in Hammocks, and it's like one of my favorites because it's so juicy, and just like whatever you're doing creatively, there's a space to be held in it so that you can propel forward, and it's not just like punching air. So often, like, it feels so. There's a lot of support around it too. And then also to touch back to the trainings and like just where, even not just the aerial hammock stuff, but dance in general in like New York City, and just the language and movement arts across the board, like in classes or in these trainings, if even when I'd just be, Midtown or in the city teaching, there's people from all over the world that are in these classes.
Right.
Always. So that's another way of multiple cultures being reached, but they were coming, here. And then there were times we'd go there. And so it was a lot.
Yeah, it's cool.
It's awesome. I love it. And it was such an extension for me because I always traveled. I always loved traveling. I always loved learning. And so the travel and, one of my favorite things about training is snacking. Got to eat all over the world, which is also one of my favorite things. So yeah, it was amazing.
It's so cool. Yeah, I want to dive in next to your pole life, teaching pole and aerial. We got into that a little bit. And also but I do also want to touch on the fact that the aerial hammock, you brought this idea, which I never thought about, of feeling supported. I feel like oftentimes in society, we don't always hug each other. We don't always lean on each other. And especially in cities like New York City, where it can be very you do you, and you get through the world with your headphones in, and, the somatic or sensual or whatever feeling of being held by this fabric that feels nice and and it's just comforting, but you can peek your way out. It's it also brings you back to that embryonic state too of I was in this position at one point in my life, and I was held, or you were held as a baby. All those things that are within the body, like our good friend Anna talks about, the knowledge that the body has that is just within and innate to your own body, that you don't even have words for or realize it's there until sometimes you move through it. And
embodied knowledge and embodied intelligence are real. Once we get a little further into this too, with the grad work that I did and stuff, the school that I was at was asking me to really do deep dives into that. But we'll get there. Yeah, it's because it's real. I mean, it's real, and it's they're trying to find words for it. That's why I always dance. I don't want to talk to you. I just move through this, again, the language and movement arts, there's a language there. And even I still get stressed, and people are like, what do you mean? Just the verbal dynamic of things. I'm like, yeah, of course. Languages are amazing. There's so much there, and I can always learn more. We can always learn more. I'm also just but there's this whole embodied knowledge that's lives in our bodies and our beings and ways of, moving. How do you pick this up? How do you move through the streets? How do you...
Yeah, I think also there's good research that's coming out. Nick Winkelman just had a book too that's movement language, and he was someone who worked at the NFL Combine, but about the way that you cue someone. And nowadays they're trying to also really put into cueing real life situations or imagery and things that can connect the whole body through a movement from a familiar space. Whether a person's deadlifting, saying oh, pretend you have a bunch of groceries in your hand and you're trying to close your car door. Right. Stuff like that, where you're bringing an image or a familiar place to the person to connect the full body, as opposed to be okay, squeeze your glutes. Make sure you're also, in this specific position, and everyone has to think about all the muscles that they have to engage to do this one thing. Where you could connect it through something that's already familiar to them. Yes. And I'm glad that that's just getting brought more into the athletic spaces, because I feel like that's already in the dance spaces in some places. They're like, just be water and just flow through the ground or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah, no, it's true. The visualization's helpful. It also, I mean, like whenever, because there's safety things too. It's like, you know, I got to get you to not, while you're disoriented, I have to make sure you're safe, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, there's so many, I don't have a good example at the moment. There's so many visualizations to use, just be like, boom, so that I got you safe because I made you straighten your leg, but it was from some visualization.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And cueing, yeah. That's great to hear that it's happening there. I mean, also in the same breath, like I'm in a lot of dance spaces where, you know, if we are doing ballet type movement or just straight up ballet, it's fine. Sometimes I teach straight up ballet. Within a class, you know, I break it down and I straight up say, this isn't about some Eurocentric movement, right? It doesn't have to be. Get that out of your body. It's about versatile biomechanics, because people get so rigid. Right? It's like, squeeze my butt. It's like, no, your glutes are like third. You got to get to the pelvic floor.
Yeah.
You got to get the front of the pelvis to the sacrum. Then your glutes are going to support, right? There's so many more things before squeeze your butt. You know, like so many more things.
Yeah, I love that. Can you repeat that one more time for the audience?
Which part?
The glutes being the third thing, because I feel like
that's the glutes are the third. So the first you've got your pelvic floor, then you've got the front of the pelvis to the sacrum, then your glutes are going to support, right? It's not squeeze your butt. It's not, I mean, because we would hear awful things like, you know, squeeze the pencil with your butt cheeks. And it's like, no, like that's not that. Everything, you know, on the front side of my body is like loose. Like I don't, you know, your glutes are big. It's like your lats. Lats are big. There's a lot more to it. To have it come from the inside out, which has always been a really big part of my dance life, who I am as a dancer, as well as a teacher. You know, it's like an inside out thing. It's not an outside in. It's not about making cute shapes. It's not about being pretty. It's gonna be amazing and fabulous because it's coming from the inside out. Your lines are gonna happen. They're gonna be there. You're gonna meet your mark or whatever.
Right.
But
I
really
love that.
find that, you know, source inside out.
Yeah. So, so let's get into so you've taught pole and some other aerial arts. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Pole. So I was already injured. And all my injuries actually never came from dance. So I just always like making sure people know this. I'm not like an injured athlete in that sense, thank goodness. I've worked with a lot of injured athletes. I've loved a lot of injured athletes. It's tough being an injured athlete, right? Regardless of where the injury comes from. So like my shoulder stuff that I have, it's from a wreck when I was a teenager. My SI joint, that's a larger conversation. We might get into it deeper later of where that came from. Actually, side note, FK8 Twigs does a really amazing podcast on the podcast We Are Man Enough.
Really?
Listen to that?
No.
It's about the somatic responses to trauma. And so I'm going to leave that there. Again, we might get into it later. We talked about doing mom life.
Yes.
Conversations too. Coming into pole injured. And this was also when the yoga fitness boom was happening, which was very foreign to me. I was like, as a performance artist, coming in and being like, what? Doesn't everybody just train every day of their life? Like, don't you live and breathe this? I just took a break because I had, you know, my second kid, you know, after performing and teaching, everybody thought I was going to give birth at the bar, or on stage. So coming into pole was like, it was a wild ride. It was at Sacred. They were opening up their studio, which was really influenced by S Factor at the time. And you had New York pole dance, which I think that's where Anna and Kira were before.
Yeah,
so there's like all this pole world that was, you know, starting to expand a little bit more outside of a couple studios. Let Me Body and Pole was there too. So anyways, I was at Sacred. I was teaching I can't even remember what it was called. I think it was a core class. It was like the versatile biomechanics class that I teach. That was happening. Anyways, I got on the pole and I was like a kid in the candy store and I was like, what? and then I took a couple of the first classes and then I took the teacher training through Expert. think it was. Expert was a training. Look, it was a while ago.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm like going way back into moving out some of the cobwebs. And so I started teaching pole. I love pole as a Dunham dancer specifically. You know, when you think even as an athlete, when you're used to training that amount of time per day and then performance, whether it's, you know, a game or whether it's a show or nightlife or whatever it is, you know, your whole life is that. You know, you eat and hydrate when on breaks, you know? So being a mom, being injured, and then coming into certain spaces in classes, one, if I even had time to do it, but there weren't many places I could go and get anything to feel like it happened in like an hour class, you know, like I'd be like, what? And I'd be annoyed, and you know, all the things. And then I'm like, then it's just working against me because now I'm just annoyed. Like I didn't need to make all this be able to happen just to be annoyed. Like I got enough going on.
Yeah.
And so pole, and then also the Bikram practice, the Bikram series, like Hatha. Those two things, and of course hammocks, and how I was working in hammocks at the time. Those three things, I called them my trinity at one point. That was the only thing I could go do and feel like anything happened. Then of course, you know, pole. What I love about pole is it's like, here's your ass on a platter, right? It's like, yeah, it is so unforgiving. And so it's like the best balance of pain and pleasure. So it was, you know, it was hardcore enough for me that also I could undulate, which was part of my healing journey, was undulating, and the pelvis is pelvis centric, which is also part of my life. It was tough, you know, learning basics, and I mean, I still can just do climbs. You know, I can do like a 20-minute like climb up and down and dismount and maybe invert, maybe not, you know, and like hit the floor and undulate back up every day or whenever I do it at home. And I'm like set. I'm good, you know. Yeah. So pole was just awesome. I taught a lot. It was also like, again, it was that kind of like paradigm of so many people were just starting to do all kinds of movement, which was great because
they're moving.
We're moving. Yes, exactly. And at the same time, it was, you know, a lot of people just wanted to come to class and do tricks. And I am not that teacher. I'm like, build your body, build your strength. Yeah. I'm a lot more of a progressive, develop your body, you know, for injury, because you want to be doing it. You know, I want to be doing it when I'm like 100.
Exactly. So make sure you get both sides and all the other
things. Yeah, train both sides. Also, what I love about aerials is that you think you have a side and then you're in the air and it's like, oh, wow. Yeah. This is actually way better on this. Like, you learn so much while you're like inverted and trying to figure out where your grip is and what the next, you know, transition is.
I feel like my abs work on this side in this position, or like it's such a different.
Better than my right, and then I'm upside down doing something that's like my right split's like, I'm like, oh, okay, well I wouldn't have known that if I kept telling myself.
Right.
But no, definitely both sides. I'm definitely the balance your sides dance teacher, regardless of what I'm teaching. It's also better for your brain and the neuroplasticity for, you know, not being side-loaded.
A lot of times
they learn. Yeah. Because it's all cognitive. I mean, all this physical is cognitive. Yeah. So, what was I talking about? Because that's when I first started getting off the tangents. Teaching, this is what I was getting at. I would want to really hold classes where people were developing their bodies to really know, example, what goes into a chopper, right? Not getting all theoretical about it, but getting it kinetically in your body so that it's powerful and it's not just like, you know, you're dumping into your shoulders and then 6 months later you're injured, right? Right. So it was wild coming from the teacher and the performance, you know, artist performance athletic worlds that I was in to then be here and see what people were wanting, which was just tricks. And look, tricks are great. They're cute. It's fun. It's exhilarating whenever you do things that you never thought you could, right? Yeah. So finding a way to hold that space to try to balance both with like really smart training so you are doing this later and you're not injured. Yeah. Along with the exhilaration of like, you just did something you never thought you could do. Right, because you need that in life. Yeah. I taught at Sacred. I was in and out. I was on and off the road, raising kids. So I was in and out a lot. I also taught core classes at Sacred, like other core classes later. And then I was on a gig in Indonesia for a while, came back home to Brooklyn, and there weren't any poles, and there was a Incredible. I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but it's all good. And I need to film something for Off-Broadway because we can't rig a theater, so I went to Incredible, and that's when it was in Greenpoint.
Oh, yes.
So that was my time of like teaching pole, like in group classes. And again, it was on and off because I was in and out because I was on the road. I was traveling so much.
Right.
And not always around a pole studio. So I wasn't always around a pole myself, right? So yeah, and then I have a pole at home. I do it all the time. It keeps me grounded. Like I poled this morning before I came here. During grad school, I had the pole. I mean, it was a part of it because, you know, it's like Ariel's Therapeutics, the creative and kinetic therapeutics of it. But like for things that are a bit deeper in pole for me, it's so empowering. At least on the group class level, it's been so empowering for people to see people come in and find their power and find a voice in ways that, you know, maybe it was taboo, maybe it's not. Everybody's got a different relationship to it. And 100% shout out to sex workers, all love all the time, get paid. And, you know, but this group class was more about, you know, bodies moving and people finding their way and communication, you know, through movement arts. So for me, though, for example, something like getting through grad school, I had to book a studio because this was before my apartment was rigged. My apartment was rigged. I had to get out of my own space. That's what was happening. It's like, you know, whenever you're just home too much, like in your own space. Thankful for a home, don't get me wrong. But I'd book a studio and I'd pole just to be able to clear my mind. Because pole is so good for mental health. There's been conversations on it, I think some research on it, but I'd love to see that open up a bit more too. You know, I would go pole, I would clear my head to be able to write what I needed to be able to like, and then I'd do this thing called body essays, and this is also what helped me through my grad work. I would pole and then I'd just stream of consciousness, about my body and what was coming through, and a lot of it is what is in my final, like, I call it thesis / it's a book. And that's, you know, it's definitely a channel for in more ways than one, we'll say.
Yeah.
But I want to hear about you because you pole. Like we poled. This is how we met. We met at the pole studio.
We met at a showcase with a mutual friend, Anna, who you've known for how many years? Anna is on this podcast as well. If you're a listener, definitely go check out that episode.
Listen to everything she has to say. I've known Anna, since Sacred. Her and Brooke Notary.
Oh, yes, they had a,
what was it called?
I don't know, but it was, this is a weird circle, but Brooke Notary was an upstairs neighbor to a family I used to babysit years ago. And during COVID, I was house sitting for them, and I was her neighbor, and I never checked out pole, never tried it.
That's so
and then it's almost 2 years now I've been doing pole, but it's really funny. And so Brooke and I would talk, and then I found out that her and Anna were friends. It's so weird.
Beautiful movers.
How small.
Oh my God, beautiful movers. So they would rent out Sacred for the work they were working on. And so in passing, I met them, and then later I did some of Anna's unstructured class during COVID to stay sane. Her and I would touch base, I think, here and there, but I worked in Jakarta. Right? And
which is beautiful,
her whole world, her whole literal world, and that life and that path that she's on. So we really connected more there, and just always uplifting. And I'll be honest too, because I would bring so many classes or workshops, and it just kind of somatics or sensual, sensory athleticism, or I was just on and on and on trying to get people in their bodies and out of just trick-based mentality across all areas, and even just movement. It's the yoga world being so vinyasa. And I'm just oh my God. Let's but again, that's the theater and dance worlds that I come from that are so rich. I'm also, I'm so thankful for my teachers and my training, and I've been very, very fortunate, I'll put it that way. That said, I'm okay, these worlds are doing what they're going to do. It's all good. I've got, other worlds to live myself. But I remember being seeing Anna get on the schedules more with her texture of movement and with her approaches, and with her, then they were listening to her, and I was like, okay, thank God everybody's listening to her. I can breathe now because I care. You know, I mean, there's part of me that's like, you know, I'm like one of those like deep feels, zero fucks type person, and you know, I was so thankful to hear and see people paying attention to her and what she has to give and offer, and the language around movement arts that she is, and she lives and breathes and shares too. So I love her so much.
Yeah.
So such an amazing person and phenomenal teacher, mover, all the things.
Yeah.
So that's
she says the same thing about you, because I asked her, I said, do you have any questions for her? I spoke to her last week. So Anna now runs an unstructured mentorship program, which is wonderful to be a part of, and learned a lot.
So important.
Through,
do it. Everybody do that.
Do it.
Everybody's listening, go do that.
Contact
Doesn't matter
Anna.
what you work in the world, just go do it.
Yes. So the basis of hers, which is also, I think, there's a lot that ties into your work too, is like the basis of the unstructured program is to pool this group knowledge and not just individual knowledge. It's to come to theses or awareness as a group and as a whole, which I think is so beautiful and needed in society, especially when there is different things happening throughout the week or the year that can be very draining or, you know, scary for some people. So weekly we would meet, and now that class is being subbed out, but by another person that she mentored. But yes, it's a wonderful program, and it's actually the program that I think drove me into just this like deep appreciation and like motivation to do pole like daily, because it's so much more, like you said, to mental health. Yes, it's really awesome to get the tricks or like to combat fears, but there's so much more in there, whether it's prompted, whether it's, you know, just like very simple prompts or simple questions that you're asking yourself. Or just paying attention to the sensations as you're doing the movement. So that has been beautiful. And so I'm very thankful to know her too. And so that's my kind of journey right now.
She also has an amazing dance background as well. And I'm saying dance is a more well-rounded experience and information that was, you know, passed on to us. Because you get into, again, the texture of movement, you get into the somatics, you get into the sensory body, you know, guiding, you get into the energetic bodies, being able to shift through movement and dance. And I think that has a lot to do with really amazing teachers, a lot that are in like all these other worlds of moving, right? Whether it's yoga, fitness, because we end up in a lot of those studios, right? This day and time. Just that background that she has is so enriched and embodied, and her ability to articulate is just amazing, incredible, just an incredible person.
Yes. And like you said, to kind of trick you sometimes into doing the things. Yeah. It's the questionings that come behind her ability to listen fully and question with intention is just, it's so beautiful. So let's also, can we dive into your grad work as like Aerials as Therapeutics? You spoke a little bit about it. Can you just tell us what you can tell us, because I know some of the stuff is in the process as well.
So I went through Goddard. Well, let me back up. I was very like anti-establishment, anti the system for a very long time. And then as I, you know, had my whole life and career to date, when I would go to apply for jobs that I would be overqualified for and experience, you know, I didn't have the paper trail. So I had started going to SUNY Empire State around the time that the aerial work picked up, like 2010. And so I stopped because, you know, work was happening. That was what, you know, feed children and had a family. We were building things together, you know, things like that. So finances are real out here on these streets. And then during COVID, I was like, well, let me finish this because I'm applying for it. And I actually put out so many initiatives in different education spaces to cross over their departments. So theater to humanities to dance to sports medicine, bring in aerials. There's like 3, well, to date, maybe it's different, but there were like 3 universities that had aerials. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's, and the crossover, I mean, I'm always, everything's always connected for me. Like I am that like fascia being of like,
yeah,
just like the whole, back to you saying Brooke lived upstairs, like that, that's just how things go all the time in my world. It's like, it's beautiful. And if you pay attention enough, you see this is so often, so common. So I finished at SUNY Empire State and I did education and movement arts. And then, cause it's like a design your degree type thing, right? There's like a label for what my degree actually is. I think it's a Bachelor of Sciences. So, and then I went to Goddard and I actually I applied to Goddard like right at their registration deadline or something. And they were like, get in here. I was like, really? Okay. So I did it in 3 semesters, which was insane. I also was going through empty nest for the first time during these 3 semesters. And life just, wow. I will not go into those dynamics right now. It was a lot though. And so and Goddard College is very different. Like, again, it's kind of like another extension. It's not like Goddard was a Dunham school, but, Mumia went to Goddard. So many activists and people went through Goddard, and Goddard is a space that wanted you to be the innovate, to bring it. Like, don't hold back, bring it, right? And it doesn't have to fit in these boxes. It doesn't have to go in these contexts. Of course, when somebody comes at me with like, fit in these boxes, I'm like, what boxes? Like, that's
don't give
yours.
me a box.
That is yours, not mine. So Goddard was really cool, and it is very different. So it's not like you go to class, and it's not like you get your credits through specific classes. You design your own way, and you work with mentors and or advisors. And I was like so fortunate who I had as a mentor and advisor. And so, you find ways of how you work best, and it's really interesting. So I at first, I knew I wanted to do aerials as therapeutics. Like, there's just something in aerials as therapeutics. I'm like, I have too much in me to not be doing something with this at this point, right? And it's not gonna happen in the context that it has in the past, and it's just so much deeper. So again, like, it's not aerial yoga for me. Like, it's so much deeper. There's so much to it. So I knew something was gonna come of that, and then at the same time, I was like, or am I just I just need this degree so I can like kind of get on the table, because at this point too, like, if you don't push the button on the computer that says you have a degree, your resume's not getting on the table.
Right.
Whereas before, there was some,
yeah,
your resume will say, or your portfolio or whatever, your name could get in the room or your work on the table. And that just doesn't happen with literally the button on the computer.
No.
Let me age myself. I'm not the button on the computer. And it was frustrating, to say the least. That said, I was like, not sure what over the 3 semesters was really going to come of anything with my grad work. I knew aerials as therapeutics was going to come, but I also have like all these other ways I can write and do things, and like all this. I mean, I don't stop. Like, it seeps out my pores, like creativity and ideas and being able to make it happen. I have that creative and functional brain somehow. So it was up until the 2nd semester. No, 2 out of 3. And I was like, all right. So I put out into the world of worlds a short film on pole silks. Because I actually saw that St. Mark's Theater 80 was going down. And it made me sad. And I love shooting in that theater. And so I was like, I just like in, 30 seconds or whenever time stops in that creative force energy, I created this whole short film on pole silks in that theater. So I wrote up, and it was fun because I did a script. So any of that counted towards my credits, right? So I could write a script and do this. And And I pitched it for a grant, I think. Yeah, it was a grant. It's like a dance on film. One of those organizations, one of those things. So pitched it to that. And then I had another research, like a legit like research project to do young dancers in hammock for aerial hammock and young dancers.
Wow.
And I had that out in the world, and I didn't know what was going to come of either one of them. So I was kind of like, I was still working and doing the back end on things. And Goddard was asking so much of me, and the work was asking so much of me that I didn't know what form it was going to take. But I continued to do this work in aerials as therapeutics in some way, shape, or form. So neither one of those things happened. The research didn't happen, and then the short film didn't happen. I didn't get that grant. So I was like, it's this thesis thing. And because a lot of times Goddard can be anti-thesis also, right? You got to do a final product, but it can be it can take a lot of different forms. And for me, I'm like, the creativity is easy. You know, I can do a whole creative piece. I can roll up. I can do aerial painting and that whole process that I do. And like, I can do that without even thinking about it and get the paper because I need the paper, right?
Yeah.
But I also knew there was so much more being asked of me. And I was like, because I'm stubborn too. I can be very stubborn. I was like, all right, I'm doing it. And so I did. I haven't looked at it in a bit because I had to just put it down and breathe and get my hamstrings working again from sitting and writing so much, right?
Yeah.
It's like atrophy.
Yeah.
Have you had those conversations with anybody in grad school? Like we're sitting here like writing about the most phenomenal, innovative dynamics of movement, and like meanwhile our bodies are atrophying because we're sitting so much.
Yeah, I love the piece like that you even just talk about the fact that, you know, I think it's just interesting that to have these experiences or lectures or these letters behind your name, you have to sit down for so many hours out of the day and take away so many years of your life just to go present on something that's about the body. And I think that that's very like important to acknowledge. It's kind of silly in many ways.
And that's getting into whenever I talk about aerials as therapeutics and sports medicine, dance medicine, and circus medicine. Circus is a little more open because it's circus. We know this stuff works. You know, there's a lot of rooms I don't get doors open in because I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not an occupational therapist. I thought about going to back to school for OT, but I was like, this is like years and years and years and years, and I'm out here living it, and so it's a different, you know, I think we need to. And this is what I get at in a lot of the work too. It's like there's a more inclusive and holistic approach that can happen. You know, performance athletes need to be able to take care of performance athletes also with this embodied knowledge and intellect. And it's not negating physical therapists in your world at all. It's saying let's expand the conversation.
Yeah.
So
and work together. You can work together with a physical therapist. And people do they sometimes. People do not like going to the physical therapist, but most of the time people enjoy going to a gym or a class or whatever movement they enjoy. So it's like good to just work with the thing that they enjoy.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, the joy in your body and like where you are having like resistance and not a good way, working against you and your healing process is the whole thing too. And when I talk about like doors open, and I mean even just to attend to like a seminar. You know, like I have contacted spaces, we'll say, and been like, you know, I'd really like to attend this. I'm not talking about presenting. I'm not rolling up with my ideas for you. I'm talking about attending, just to listen. And you have to be a physical therapist to even like get in there. I'm like, wow, interesting. So, and I'm not saying everywhere is like that, you know. Yeah. It is a big conversation though, and I do start, you know, kind of massaging it open through the grad work. So like I was saying, I had to put it down. By the time I got done, I was like between personal and academic life, like I was like deteriorating. So I think the abstract that I went with, because it was like, you know, the writing part is my challenge. That was what was being asked of me, rather than just being able to do, you know, creativity till the dawn, like day's end, whatever. And so it was Aerials as Therapeutics, Creative and Kinetic Therapeutics with aspects of socio-political mobility or aspects of socio-political, something about mobility and social, I'd have to look back at the abstract. That's bad. I should have wrote it down before I came here. But Goddard also asked of me to, so it's an ethnographic body of work. And they were like, we're doing academia different and you're both source and resource. And I was like, what? So they held me so accountable to have this embodied knowledge and this embodied intellect drive all of this body of work. And I did it. I definitely did it. That's for sure. I have to remind myself that I actually did that. I have my degree on my table just so I remember that's like, I actually did that.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was really great. So I go through creative processes with different aerial apparatus and like how those apparatus can, kind of how they flow and work. It's a little more kind of poetic maybe in the creative therapeutic side of it. And also Goddard was like, we want to hear about your story because it relates. And I was like, nobody cares about my story. They're like how I grew up in community and how I community, whether it's from like how I grew up down south, which is very different than what the only things we hear about down south, which are also true. The Lower East Side, indie theater, like all this, the ways we communicate, home birth and Brooklyn communities, like, all these dynamics. So, there's a part of that in there. So a lot of me kind of wants to restructure the thesis to put it out there and be more published for specific aspects of sports medicine, and things. And the socio-political dynamics it was more of like a spoken word approach within the thesis on how, politics, like our bodies are politics and, intentional immobility around certain movements because, unity is powerful. And so there's a whole section there too, which again, that's not necessarily relating to other more points to be made around aerials as therapeutics and sports medicine and whatnot. The creative therapeutics, goes through choreographing, creating, kind of unloading and all the apparatus that I've worked on, being creative in a therapeutic way for myself as well as for others. So I bring in other stories that have happened too, like with a pole performance once. I remember we had a showcase at Sacred and I was just like, I don't care about because I'm a lot of times I'm like so that mama in the kitchen. I'm just like, what do you need? What you want? It's all about you. You want to go teach. I'm like, I teach more workshop style. This is for you. This isn't for me. This is for you. So what do you want? And I curate or customize. And I love doing that because it's just more authentic experience for everyone. But at this particular showcase, I was like I was so on the road and like jet lagged and raising kids and showing up to teach. Like, once I'm teaching though, I'm 100% present. But I remember getting there and being like, oh, I guess I gotta perform because it's a showcase and I'm a teacher here. I was like so there, not caring about performing. And then I was like, well, does anybody here want to perform? Like, do y'all need me to help you with choreography? Like, what do you need? Like, what's going on? How can I show up for you? How can we show up for this? And people were nervous. Like, that the beginner movers being like, oh, I want to do something, but I don't know. I'm not a dancer. I'm not a performer. That kind of friction of like, I do, I don't.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, why don't we just do what we do during class in like 3 minutes? And they were like, huh, okay. So
I love it.
And this is what I love. This is about creating. I literally blocked it. And I was like, okay, there's 6 of us. I think there were 6 of us. 6 of us. Yes, 6. 4 or 6. Anyhow, I can't remember the exact number, but it was even. I do remember that. I was like, get in the windowsill, because I would do windowsill burlesque. We had curtains. You couldn't hang on them. Like, they weren't like rig. But windowsills that you could fit in, curtains, poles, floor. I think there were other curtains. So I said, yeah, there were other curtains. I said burlesque here with that fabric, windowsill movement here, which is usually like peekaboo, like, feet, hands, whatever.
Oh, yeah, cool.
And then wall to poles. And so it was this very just blocked out organic process. And I had one person who was you know, a little shy, nervous, a mother. You know, being a mom and then being a pole dancer there can have some societal, you know, friction as well. And she was like, I don't think I'm going to perform or like get on the pole, but like I do want to do the window. I'm like, and we're all supportive. It's like, do you be exactly where you are? Like, that's what this is about. There was no set choreography. There was no set movement, like physical, we're going to do jade now. Like, there was none of it at all. And we morphed, and everybody just changed from fabric to window to poles and floor. And it was the most phenomenal experience. And I'll never forget, we're all doing our thing, and our, you know, there's this authenticity to this thriving collective thing as well. Like, I really am in that space. And I attempt to hold that space a lot in teaching and people and all the things. So I remember being on the floor, kind of like being on the floor, sliding to the pole, grabbing it to pull up and looking up. And Homegirl was like on the pole. She was out of the windowsill on the pole, like living her life. And I'm like, this is why we do what we do, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like one of the stories that I went into with pole choreography and choreographing in that sense of being a therapeutic process as well.
Yeah.
Amongst others, you know, I go into pole and silks, which I love. That's like I call it my beautiful beast. I love pole and silk so much. I really wish we could get more fixed poles around the city.
So when you're talking about pole and silks, you're talking about the silk attached to the pole. Just so the listeners understand.
Correct.
We'll definitely have Katie's Instagram and other things in the bio, but Katie attaches a silk or hammock fixture to the pole. And go ahead, you can
no, it's all, I call it pole silk fusion. I mean, it came out, you know, a while back, and now I hadn't really seen much of it. I mean, I did pole silks fusion because I had to, you know. It's like that thing, I have to do something that's like my next evolution as a creative, to keep myself sane, while holding it down for so many things and so many others. And so for me, I love it. It's like a human tetherball. And there's so many things you can do. And like, you know, for me, again, it's that there's a balance to it because you have the fabric. Which, you know, can be relentless also, depending on how you're using silks. But the plumb line, where the fabric's always going to come back to, is this fixed metal pole. So it's like, you know, there's so much there.
Oh my gosh. And I played with it too. It's really fun.
It's so fun, right? It's so fun. I love it so much. So
many different shapes.
Yes. So I would choreograph and perform just solo. I mean, I performed and choreographed solo a lot too, just for sheer amount of time that I didn't have, you know, and like to be like rehearsing other folk or things like that as a mom and on the road. But then I did just get to teach it in Italy.
Nice.
Yeah, that was super fun.
Nice. But make sure make sure that the pole is fixed. That's
pole fixed.
Pole should be fixed.
The pole should be fixed. Pole is fixed. Pole is fixed. I did just do a portable, not a tension. Lord, do not do it on a tension pole. Don't. I did just do a workshop on portable. And I was so, like, once I get safety mama on you, like in a class or something, like that's when the mama really comes out. I'm just like, no. It's that one look, you know, and you're not doing it. The portable has its own movement vocabulary that's very specific. So you can't do a lot of things. You can do some things. So we did some things. Yeah, fixed poles, that's where it's at. I would love to have more fixed poles in the city just so I can do aero burlesque with the pole and silks.
Ooh,
it's so beautiful.
Sounds wonderful. Yeah, and like peeking through the silks and stuff. Oh my gosh, that sounds like a really good idea.
It is so fun. I love it. I love pole silk so much. I guess that's like my jam. That's like my thing.
Yeah.
And then I love doing, another thing I covered too is when hammocks are low to the ground, you do like floor work, sensual movement. Low to the ground hammocks. So I think that's on my website too from an off-Broadway gig.
I've been playing with the lyra like that, where it's like lyra on, like low to the ground and then just like,
I love
it. It's fun. It's always fun to get grounded in different ways too, and then have this like, this thing that you can lift yourself up with a little bit, but then you can go to the ground when you want to and feel safe, and then when you want to feel strong or energetic. And
Yeah.
I also love that you stated that you need to have this like creative outlet to put into your life when you're doing all these other things. Like I often like to combine things as well. So like when I learned animal flow years ago in 2000,
I saw that come out. I was like, okay, so
yeah,
this is good. This is good.
Yeah.
The boom and everything. There was a lot of stuff that was coming out that was not great.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'd see things like animal flow and then like liquid motion.
Yeah.
You know, things were coming through. And of course, back to Anna. Shout out to Anna.
Yeah. So like animal flow, like I started that and then I would combine it with like dribbling a basketball and then like, or would combine it with like throwing and catching a tennis ball. And then even when I was doing pole too, I'd like learn like a remi sit and I'm like, this is painful. And then I'd be like, okay, let me take a tennis ball and throw it against the wall. So I have something else to do while I'm sitting in this painful thing. And, you know,
painful opener.
So it's like, yeah, just combining things in different ways and getting your brain to think in different ways. And then often returning to the one thing, you return with like a deeper awareness or an easier awareness.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you're a kinetic person. Like for me, even as a kid, and my kids are the same, I have to remind them too. Their father was the same. We're so kinetic. Like 8 hours of training and performing or whatever, you know, like that amount of time to the degrees. Because I mean, the degrees, again, back to Dunham and those 8 hours of Dunham days, like that was like, a lot of people don't make it through that, right? Because it's so demanding. But for me, that's what I have to do to be able to think clearly.
Right.
You know, it's like, this is too much. It's all too much out here.
Yeah.
And so being that physical, it's like the kinetic to cognitive, the sensory to cognitive. Like, you know, if I don't undulate and do sensual movement and just center myself in those ways, you know, then, or somatic movement too.
Yeah.
Then, which is all interrelated, then, you know, I'm not as at ease with half the stuff we got to face on a regular basis, just being human. Yeah. You know, so much less having a purpose and a focus. And like, just like we talked earlier, you know, you had done your thing earlier before we came together today.
Yeah.
It's like, I pulled before I came here so I could think clearly as possible. But yeah, it's real.
I think it's also like, if you break it down to the simple context of like, our brains are designed to look for problems and to solve problems and stuff. And like, if we were to not move around, there's so many problems you can find on Google, like through Instagram or something. There's problems everywhere all the time. But you can also just figure out problems like in your body, in movement. And then you're like, oh, these other things are just, they're another thing. Yeah. But they're not everything. Like you can overwhelm yourself with all the other informational or problems. Or you could just do some simple problem solving with your hands, your body. Yeah. I always used to say like, I'm not great at math. But I can break that stage up in fractions. You know what I mean? Like, I can block that out. I can get across the stage in like, 3 leaps or, like that's I can solve that. Like or your counts, like your 8 counts or whatever. Like, exactly. That's interesting. The musicality, but then that goes into musicality and movement in the brain. So you did talk a little bit about sensual movement. Is there anything you'd want to add in there with like either like you mentioned that you enjoy undulations daily or just whether it's in a hammock or on the ground or anything like that that you want to share?
I mean, undulations for me is it's a way to work the kinks out. Like no matter what I'm teaching, at the end of class, I typically do big body waves just because it like reverse, front and back. Because it does, like I can leave a class that we've done whatever we've done in, which is usually pretty intense, and I'm like, they just worked some kinks out just by undulating at the end of class, shake it out, little shakes, things like that, shimmies, it's like I make it cute and like funny or whatever, but I'm like, that I know you're good leaving that door now because you've undulated. And you shimmy. Sensual movement can have a lot of different kind of takes on it, right? We were I think I'm so excited to hear about your other podcast that's coming up, and not to go too much into it, around the world sensual. It's going to happen a lot. So it does freak people out. This is for sure. I mean, I've held so many workshops, and it's like, sensual somatics, and I've tried to change the name from sensual to like sensory, and it's like people are like sensory, and it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It freaks people out. One thing I love about doing it though, and whether I'm teaching a specific class or whether it's happening within, pole class, or whether it's happening within a dance or movement class, is there's an element of working with vulnerability and kind of moving through the awkwardness that is so powerful.
Right.
And it's so hard for us. I mean, vulnerability is hard.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is hard. It is so difficult. It's so tough. And for good reason, across the board, across genders, across all of it. So it's like, for me, it's like an outlet of allowing ourselves to be a bit more human and be all right with it. So that's an aspect of sensual movement and what is important for me. If I'm talking just straight up like undulating and, like I got a pole flow and it's all in my body, it just feels good. It's empowering. It's who I think for me, because I am, I identify as a woman, and OMBAN, that, it's allowing us to tap into who we are, right? It's really and truly tapping into source for me. And everybody can have their, approach to belief systems and whatnot. For me, that's what makes sense. And that's where it's at. It's powerful. I think it's also very intimidating, which is unfortunate. It's intelligent, and I think that could also be intimidating. Unfortunately, I talk about this in my thesis / it's a book also, how I have a girlfriend who was dealing with some immobility issues, and the doctor of whatever form the doctor said, crawl on the floor. And I was like, we're going to crawl on the floor like a stripper because it's going to work. Like, it's just adding the circular, the ripple into a linear movement that is, we start crawling, right? That's, you start pushing off the belly, you start, so that is there. And then it's just like, add a ripple to it.
Right.
Like, start opening up the space,
right?
Opening up the joints, hydrating the joints. And that's why I think it's so important too for women post-birth.
Right.
To really have sensual movement, because it's also it activates the core and the pelvic floor in ways that most things don't reach.
Right.
So I think it's a great strengthener, like warming up for pole with sensual movement. If you're pushing off the floor, the push pull in it also, like the taffiness of it.
Yeah.
Also, it really, really strengthens the joints in a fluid way. So it's that, and that's mobility. It's a balance of flexibility and strength.
Yeah.
Right? That's what mobility is. So if you want to stay mobile, sensual movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that's kind of a few different examples. It just feels good. It's like yawning through your body.
Right.
Right. Like every morning when I get up, I typically go put on water for coffee and tea, because I do like my things at once. It's a little ritual. And I'm sitting there like doing foot articulations. Sometimes they're very straightforward and linear, and sometimes they're like, it's like yawning through the feet. Plie rolls and things like that are just... So, and then that travels to the rest of my body, and then it's every other joint from there. And then it's like, then I'm like, oh, I'm awake.
Yeah.
Hey, world. I think I can do this.
Yeah, I love how you said yawning through the body, because it's like, it just makes you think of like breathing in and yawning out through every joint of the body. And just, and that seems so nice and so like relaxing. And that is the idea of sensual movement, is doing something that feels nice, that, is nice for your body and your body wants.
And tapping into that embodied intelligence that I was touching on earlier is also a form of non-erasure of femme movement and femme wisdom. And I think it's more important than ever this day and time to everybody needs to be tapping into it, regardless of what you identify with and regardless of what your biology is.
Yeah. I think even just with spine undulations, all of our nervous systems are in the spine. So if you have a blockage in there, it's like, okay, what else is that blockage blocking?
Yeah.
Is it blocking sensory input to like my arm in a different way?
It
just
is.
like, yeah, the easiest way to tap into it is like getting to the actual source of the channel.
That's true. It's so true. And
yeah.
And I think, again, this sensual movement in something like sports medicine, we'll say, like something more linear, something like that is for that exact purpose. There's science. There are, the nerves ending, there's the 33 vertebrae. Like this is real in our bodies. It's real and it's connected. And, you can go, contract, release, flex, point, all you want. Like, how are you moving through it? It's like, malleable and sand. I mean, I teach young dancers that are like my kids' friends. This is back in the day. We'd be like at the beach, and like sitting there, like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just like moving my feet through the sand.
Right.
It's like, it helps my point or whatever. And they're like, oh my gosh. And like help them years later in dance, It's like the malleable, there's a malleableness to it. That's it's a strengthener. So, but it's real. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. You also brought up the athletic space because it's funny to me as an athlete going into pole, because as an athlete, oftentimes you're playing defense, or if you're playing offense, you're like trying to brace your body or your core in a way to like not let someone knock you over, right? So like, and then going into a pole studio, you're like tilting side to side or like forward and back, and like if you were to do some of the same undulations like on the court, you'd probably just get like knocked over very often and lose your balance.
Yeah.
So as an athlete, I found it so nice to have that as like a complementary like practice to the stiffness of the body or even the pelvis. Like you hold a lot of tension to make sure that you're stabilizing for impact. Right. Whereas in like something that is pole or any type of dance movement where you're given that freedom and that allowance to your body, because it is safe already in that space.
Yeah. So that's like prehab, rehab, right? That's like the before and after the game, or the stance, the like hands on your quads, bent over stance in a lot of sports. Like whether it's a resting or whether it's a like, the ball's just somewhere else and you
like a defensive ready stance.
Decisions. Yes. Like, can you just put a little more weight into your palms and onto your quads and like decompress your spine for a second? Like, a little breath.
A little
and keep it moving.
And then,
a little breath, keep it moving. And it doesn't have to be, all that like, we're not like having to go that far with it, but it can be a breath in the spine. It can be a breath, for your brain. It can be a the non-linear movement for 2 seconds in a very direct way of being in your body.
No, it's great. It's all great. It's just cool to see different correlations and where you're like, oh, this is where I'm stopping things. This is where, and this is why, right? Like this is why I'm not allowing myself to undulate in certain places. But then, I think, and also I wanted to tie in that like, Anna had, like almost a year ago now, like had me bring the seniors to a pole class. And so a lot of them were undulating for like the first time in a very long time. And they were like, back in the day, we used to call this the body roll or the Tootsie Roll or something like that. And it was just like, she was like, it's okay, I think they still call it that. And they like really loved just that freeing of the body, even at an age where like you may have not done it for years. I think the fixed point of the pole was helpful in like learning to have directionality in where when the head touches or the chest touches or the hips touch.
And you can also redistribute weight.
Right.
Because of your apparatus, right? Which is a big component of of healing and just being able to get out of maybe my hips jacked up today, and I can get weight load out of it by shifting into like using my upper body a little bit more and take weight off and knees or whatever. So seniors, as in like senior citizens.
Yeah, like the oldest person was 95 years old.
Yes.
She was.
For a second, I was like seniors in high school. Or senior, but my brain is like,
it's okay.
Teared out like that with the word senior.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome.
So the first time we went, we had one class. The second time we went, we had Anna, Mara, and Marlo Fiskin came, and we did 3 different rooms, and seniors were doing, and Tamara was also teaching, and we had a chair class too. So they just loved this like Amazing. Freeing movement. That also, it was just wonderful to see at that stage in life how valuable it can be for them to be given a space where they can feel comfortable to do those things. Yeah. And they still talk about it to this day, so like sweet. How much they enjoyed it. And it was also wonderful to see how strong they were and capable they were of different things. I wrote a whole paper on how pole dancing would be great for the senior population.
I love this.
Yeah, because even just getting up and down from the ground and all of that, it's just a wonderful thing for so many people. And why I also very much enjoyed your paper. It brought up the fact that the aerials was also accessible and equitable for people, which is poles are a little bit harder sometimes to fit in a space, but when you think about like equitability and like making sure that everyone has access to things, I think that is beautiful and wonderful.
Yeah. In a squat. Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is people look at it's like I can never do that, and then I've had people that clients or students that come in that have cerebral palsy, and they're doing what they can. I mean, as you were speaking about the seniors, one thing that was coming up so strongly was like they're remembering how strong they are. Right. You're remembering what you can do. You remember what you can access rather than hyper focused on what's not working. Right. Right. Which, that's a whole shift of perspective that can totally shift your timeline. Yeah. And same with people that would come in. With the hammocks, for many different reasons. I mean, I would have rugby players beside, like a young rugby player beside, 78-year-old golfer who was a total powerhouse. I miss her so much. Who would be beside, the young yogi, and they're tearing it up over here. But it's, accessibility, has been really big in the hammocks. I mean, it was a lot to manage as a teacher, right? Like managing 20 hammocks of people doing this for the first time, right? Because it is so accessible. At the same time, again, I need to shift my perspective and remember how empowering it is for people and how like they can access spaces in their bodies at time that you wouldn't otherwise. I mean, there's some really, I can't remember them off the top of my head, some really inspiring PT spaces that I follow on Instagram. And I'm like, I just want to put a hammock in there. Can I just get one? Just one, because there's this like barrier of entry because people get overwhelmed a lot of time with rigging and just making it happen, or it not being like a group fitness class, Yeah. And I'm just like, no, let's do this. Just think of it as a piece of equipment. Just one more piece of equipment. That's anything to really be able to bring it into a space so that it is more accessible. And because the movement vocabulary on it is like endless. I mean, there's so many things you can do and so many ways it can be, 8 inches off the floor, or it can be, performance height where it's like that's your hand over your head height. So I've rigged it at a center as well. And so the seniors were going upside down eventually. So we just first worked on like shifting your body weight and stuff like that, but then eventually like they were going upside down, doing that ankle hook, releasing their lower back in a way that they or they never thought was ever possible, right? And the relief, the relief. I mean, like, especially that's the thing, the relief, and you can trust it. It's this the zero compression inversion is the largest genius of it, right? People are like, oh, I go upside down on what are those tables? Ankle. Oh yeah, those. I call them ankle tables just because my visual brain just goes ankles table, going upside down. Inversion table. There you go. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, you're held by your ankles. You're gonna have tension. Yeah. It's probably gonna be in your jaw. And your hips, because those points. It's ankles, hips, jaw. And then maybe you'll get upside down and get some relief. But you're hanging by your ankles. It's your ankles. And it's like, I don't know how soft they are, you know, I don't know how really supported to actually release, you know, so, but the thing around the zero compression inversions is that you're around the sacral area for therapeutics, you know, you're around the sacral area, your legs are wrapped safely. They're also, the hips are open because you're in like a diamond shape, right?
Yeah.
So the hips are externally rotated. And the weight of your skull is pulling your spine out of your pelvis. And it's relief. It's just straight up relief. You have, I have my own experience. And I want to hear about you too, because you've talked about the relief you've gotten in the hammocks as an athlete. It's beyond, because you're not gripping. You're fully, again, back to the support. You're fully supported.
Right.
In a zero compression inversion.
Right.
It's new. Yeah. It's new to the body, it's new to the mind, it's new to the sensory, but I mean, everything about it. Because you can reverse compression in a handstand or a headstand. And, you know, I mean, depending on how amazing you are at it or not, you can have a zero compression headstand, more power to you. I know it's possible, but it's not often that it happens. So, you know, it's just a whole different world of relief and possibility, and then in other supported poses and posture, not poses, like movements, we'll say, you can redistribute weight loads. And like, where else can you do that besides, like, you know, parallel bars, which is great. I'm not knocking any of the other ways of doing things. It's just the way you can move with the support of an aerial hammock but let's hear about, I want to hear about you, because I like literally had that minutes. I'm like, T-story, I want to hear it.
Yeah. So I went to an aerial hammock class, and with Rochelle, who's also on this podcast, maybe like episode 3 or 4. But she does melt method, and then she also does hammocks after, so it's like hammock conditioning. And I recently went yesterday as well. But so what I realized after being upside down in the hammock and locking my feet in a certain way, I'm like, I like immediately got out of it, and I'm like, I have a whole right leg that is like attached to my body that I've been forgetting because my hips have been, now I know they've been hiked a different way, you know. And I think my diagnosis, based on my history in my body, would be that I'm left leg dominant from basketball, primarily jumping off of my left leg for layups or floaters, or to even just get into the athletic stance to like push off to dribble. And also, or maybe like when I'm holding a child because I've babysat, or you know, I've lots of family. But I think that like my hips have always been shifted to the left. I also had Crohn's in my left, my left colon was like very inflamed and swollen. So like there's a lot of imbalances that I found there. But I find that the hammock is like the best way to reset my hips, and just this like easy thing you could do daily if you have the accessibility to it. And then you're just like, you can just go through the rest of your day walking and being like, oh, I have 2 legs I'm using.
Yes.
I feel so much better in my core, and where my hips feel looser. My pelvis is definitely like looser and not holding so much tension. And also I even hang into the shoulders, and like, I just put it like mid back and I'll hang there and allow the like lower part to compress, and even just like the upper side to just shift with my shoulders, and like that feels way more relaxed as well. And I think it's also just something that you can, to your point, like the inversion table, it's never going to be the same because you can't move freely. So the hammock, you can move so freely into it, and you can move into what feels good, and you can move out of what doesn't feel good if there's too much tension or a rope pull in a certain area. Yeah. So that's and then, I mean, when you just give even seniors the simple, like downward dog with the hammock at the hips. Yeah. Their mind is blown. And I'm like, you didn't even go to the upside down part yet. Like, but you're just doing a downward dog that's supported.
Yes.
And you have access to it now. So I think it is a beautiful apparatus and movement modality that I really do hope becomes more seen in the movement, fitness, and athletic spaces for sure. So I hope that your your work moves on to a lot of spaces.
Yeah. There was a point you had made and I already forgot it.
Okay.
It'll come back. It's really interesting in thinking of it actually getting into sports medicine and dance medicine, right? Because I mean the possibilities are endless. It's like it can revolutionize the game, period.
Yeah.
In our bodies and the games, like legit games. Like I'm always like, my kids are like, what do you want to do with this? And I'm like, well, the Nets training facility needs to have at least 10 hammocks and they need to hire me.
Yes. And the Liberty too.
And the Liberty too. Yeah. Yes, Liberty too.
Especially since some of the Liberty are moms. So
exactly. We were talking about side-loaded stuff. That was the point. And yeah, total Liberty. But I say that because I'm home. You know, like that's home for me. There's universities with like big sports universities, sports medicine, departments. We need to get in there. I say we, hire me, get in there, make that happen. And then also there's like this, I'm super fascinated by this. There's a training facility in Switzerland that all the European football teams come to, like rehab and prehab and everything. I'm like, we need hammocks there, so it's very real. I hope it does get into it also because it's relief, it's support. It's like you don't have to go so hard in healing,
right?
Like it's there, it's accessible. It's the one thing you've talked about too, being upside down and everything that your body experiences, and you get to move freely or different wraps, things like that, and how you're supported and where it is on your body. The alignment, like. That's how I could come from teaching professional dancers, artists, performance athletes, all of that into the regular world, we'll say. And I say that in love, right? The regular world, because I knew the hammock was aligning them. As long as they were safe, I knew their alignment was all right.
Right.
Like, and so, yeah, whenever I'm being quite insistent and hardcore, like if you're wrapping it at your shoulder height, both arms are even, because I know once you go upside down, that's your shoulders loaded evenly.
Right.
And so it is healing. It's happening. It's like a trick. It's like a trick to get you healing.
Yeah.
And in alignment, like, but I'll be honest, like that's one of the only, I was like on a regular at first, I'd be like, okay, the hammocks are aligning them. They are all out of their minds, disoriented and like, because again, like I've got a gymnasium of 20 hammocks in Athens, Greece. Nobody speaks English, right? I mean, some do. We're talking language and movement arts, right? That's really that's the language you're speaking, and it's new to the body, right? So I knew the alignment, and then the core. So I cue once I've gotten people comfortable and familiar into the hammocks. I cue from the zero compression inversion to like let your belly fully go. And I'm like, or let your core go. I'm like, how often can you say that? Like, I'll make jokes of it too, so people realize like this is real. We're up in it. And then I'll cue how to re-engage the pelvis to support the zero compression. And then over time, that develops into how you support yourself standing. So if you have it on a daily, like it's real. I was told I can't really, my ligaments are so overstretched from my SI joint injury and this, that, and the other that I'll never this, that, and the other all the time, right? Similar to like, parallel kind of ish to like how I was told when I got pregnant, my career was over. It's like your ligaments are never going to be able to be strong again. I'm like, I'm going upside down and getting so deep up in it. Like I'm doing like these pulsations to re-engage. And like, I mean, it's taken time. It takes time, yes, but it's so right there at my fingertips to do, and it's happened at this point. I mean, it's been years. I have a hammock at home. I go upside down and swing every morning. I have my little morning hammock session so that I can, get it together. Yeah. But it's real, and the core. I mean, everything that shifts from, at first it seems like overwhelming, like and then people get over that, and then it's like. Then it's fun, it's just like, woohoo, yes, this is so fun. And then it's like, oh my gosh, it feels so good. It's like, I can't not do this. Like there's like this pattern how people open up to it. Also, and every single time it's happening, I know that they're getting these benefits and relief and strength. So,
I think like to what you were touching on as well, like the dominant side, it's in almost every athletic field, right? So like you have the baseball players who bat the same way typically, or the pitchers who are always throwing the same way, one quad and one hamstring working a little bit more than the others. Or even like at one point I trained a fencing, an individual who was a fencer. And so like the amount of lunges you end up doing with one leg. So yeah, every athletic stance isn't always like symmetrical. There's like a lot of
so
even though it's so side,
the mama and me's like, man, poor babies, and then the dancer in me is like, train both sides. You know, it's so real.
It's a great recovery tool. I feel like, again, to relax into it. But do you have any? You did briefly touch on the experience you have with the injury. Do you have any other like cool advice or knowledge to other moms, whether it's for the hammocks or undulations, anything that you can share with the audience who is listening that's a mother or could...
It's funny because when we first started talking to, like, outside of the podcast, we talked about, we really got into side-loaded sports and like how passionate we are about like that being such a thing, and there's like there's something we can do about it, and that went right into being side-loaded as mom, having, you know, the kid on your hip, or, you know, you're breastfeeding more on one side than the other, so your shoulder and your torso twisted. And, you know, if you're like me and most moms out there too, you're like breastfeeding, if you are breastfeeding, washing dishes with the other hand, you know, or like doing 1,000 on the, you know, it's like, so side-loaded as a mom, yes, for sure. Also, the thing as a mom that happens so often that the medical industrial complex doesn't necessarily consider, and I would love to see that change around mothers, is the elasticity in our pelvis, right? So there's more room for the sacrum to be out of alignment in childbearing years. So, and out of the childbearing years, because elastin in our joints allows you to have, I don't know, a baby come through your portal, right? A human coming through the portal. Like, it's real. So, you know, and most moms I know, they're like, that's that thing you were talking about, you know, like newer moms now. But most women I know, and most side-loaded athletes that I know, it's all like, well, it's L4, L5. I'm like, it's your sacrum. You know, like, it's the sacrum, because the sacrum's a keystone of our body. And so the moment that is shifting, like everything else, it's like, you know, I'm always saying in your ankles. When I teach dance, when I teach most things, but specifically dance, like when I'm teaching the professional division at Ailey, I am like on your ankles. Because anything that happens in your ankles happens in each joint of your body, because it's a domino chain up, from down up. So the sacrum being the keystone of the body, if that like shifts, I mean, my sacrum shifted so slightly. Like I remember when it happened, like I was on the floor. I had like 5 kids at the house. One being my niece, who was like 1, so I was carrying her after, like it was a whole thing. But it shifted, and so many women have similar experiences, or side-loaded sports. It's coming from the pelvis and the sacrum that then is going into the posterior chain of the spine. So advice I would give is, like, figure out how to take care of yourself first and maybe two and first, because being a mom's real out here. If you have access, any pelvic floor specialist, just go to it. Like, just do it. You know what? If it's your Pilates class, like, make sure you got a good teacher, because there's a lot of stuff out there that's like, meh. Hammocks, of course. I'm always going to say hammocks, and a roller, a foam roller. I am such a foam roller and TheraBand person. Like, if I don't have hammocks, I got my roller and TheraBand. You know, if I am working with clients and they don't have a hammock in their home, I'm like, okay, roller and TheraBands. Like, it's that. And then you also have to love what you're doing. You know, if we keep this constant stress in our bodies, and the cortisol, like, is just popping off like every other second, you know, it's deteriorating. And so, you know, however you can manage that. And I think managing that more from a sensory space, particularly for mothers, work with the sensory and the energetic bodies, and not so much like in your head, like, I've got to go do squats and I've got to go do 100 crunches. And it's like, you don't actually, like, get up in your somatic and sensory body and move for you. Like, that's move for you. Like, how are you going to love yourself If you don't love yourself, how are your kids going to know how to love? Like, if you can't take care of yourself, you know, if mama's not happy, nobody happy, as we say. And at times that can be a privilege. Taking care of yourself can be a privilege. Taking care of your physical and mental health whenever, you know, hustle and grind is on, you know, but it's such a broad question too, because moms mom very differently. You know, like I didn't have nannies, we didn't have babysitters. We had community and we had each other. For the period of time that we were together, the kid's father and mine, you know, we would go back and forth, like, you know, you're working, you're hustling, okay, I got the kids, and it wasn't like we were passing them off. It was just like our you know, organic way of doing it without, you know, our family here or anything. We had community, like I said, but everybody moms differently. You gotta figure out how to take care of yourself. And I'll be honest, what I've learned from empty nest, which has been a whole thing. It's like, have you ever done floor bar? Like in dance or any kind of movement where it's like a mirror smack in your face.
Okay.
Or it's like, here's what you're doing. Here's where you're side loaded. Here's where you think your hip's working well, but guess what? It's not, honey. Like so floor bar, I always say the floor bar mirror. I say that a lot. People have the dance reference. It is like, emptiness has been like that. It's like here in your face. Like here's just what's up on so many levels. I'll be honest, I've had people in my life that are like, because I'm a hustler. Like my kids, I am like, get it done, whatever it is. And the production in me too, like, so the arts and entertainment, like, never dies also, right? Yeah. Like my circadian rhythm is still like up till 2 a.m. and then sleep till like 11. Or that production more kind of like sporadic. If I'm up, I'm up. If I'm asleep, I'm asleep. Kind of natural rhythm in my body. Point more so though, is with I totally just lost my train of thought with my circadian rhythm. Emptiness in your face. I've had so many people, because I am such a hustler and I'm just like, get it done. You do what you got to do. Like what, you know, and you make it happen. And so like example, my kids, they wanted to do like academia, like they want to go to college. And I'm like, okay, you know, do your thing. I mean, I was a dancer. I knew I was going to be dancing and not going to school young. I went to school arts for high school and then I was like done. So I never pushed it as my point with that example. And they came to me, I'm like, all right, you want to do this? Here's your, I call it the get shit done list. And, you know, they're some of the top schools in the country on scholarship. Like they did it. They made it happen. You know, I just said, here's what you got to do to get it done. Like make it happen. And for me, I had people in my life like stop me in my tracks. They're like, girl, sit down. You have got to look at what you just accomplished. And I'm like, what? No, it's just what you do. It's, you know, next. Like, it's the production. It's just like, and so to the moms, you know, it's like really, really find the love and joy, you know, celebrate your successes, like do it. Don't not do it because you're like, I got to do like the next, you know, 1,000 things on my list. Like 1,000 things on your list is there. It's there. It's going to be there. You're going to do it. Or you're not. You know, it's like maybe the groceries get done today. Maybe the kids had popcorn for dinner. Like they're fine. So, but again, motherhood is like such a big spectrum too, because you know you're talking about privilege and access and provision, a pretty big spectrum. So yeah.
I mean, even though with privilege and access, I do like the point that like everyone can try to find just at least one thing they can do for themselves that day. Yeah. You know, whatever that means for them. Hopefully they can have access to that moment of time. Yeah.
Like when if you're walking the kids to school, like, and you're stressed about all the demands that are on you, because they are like from everywhere in every direction. It's like demand. Like still break through that and like have fun. Have conversation, talk whatever silliness, be whatever, you know, sing songs, like play games, like, you know, mess with each other in like a uplifting way, you know, like that right there, that just penetrates that stress so much. And over time, it's similar, like if you got a hammock every day, you know, over time, this is just like the most phenomenal relief.
Yeah. When you're walking with the kids to school, maybe you can walk sideways or skip or backwards or, you know, step over each crack. Like something that, like, that's still movement, that's still exercise, that's still, if you can't go to the gym, there's there's so many other ways
So
in
many
which
ways.
you can move your body and do things that are good for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And when you're at the playground with your kids, get on the jump.
Oh my gosh, I know. That's
Is
what
this
I
still-
love
is that-
most
is
about.
that like an old name for it?
I know. It's
Pull up bars. I don't know.
No.
I was like an 80s kid. So, you know, like we had like the rope in the
Yeah.
middle of the gym and
Yeah.
you know the slide that, you know, would burn you in the hot sun. Like,
Yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just returned to my childhood playground. That was just, it was not, it wasn't renovated for the past, like maybe like 30 years. It was like the same playground. So, well, over 30 years because So it was the same playground for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And then they renovated into this beautiful playground. And there's now like so many things to swing around on. I like went back and I was like, I'm going to be swinging and making shapes and doing all the things because this is too good. And if you're with your kids at the playground, like
Play.
Play.
Like do that. Like definitely do that. And so you were with the city, so you've seen kind of like the playground renovations
With the New York
around?
City. Yeah, I'm speaking to a playground renovation at home in Cleveland, Ohio.
Right.
But yes, I
with the city, you saw kind of how this revolution's taken.
Yes,
place
and they have
to here in New York City.
Yeah, so with the city, they've renovated a lot of playgrounds. They've taken the past commissioner. His initiative was, I guess in the past they had a bunch of parking lots that they like considered playgrounds. Everyone is supposed to live within a certain area of like a certain mileage of a playground or something, a park. So they've been renovated spaces like under bridges into playgrounds. So there's a lot of new playgrounds and input that goes into that. Like there's a lot of capital projects that go on, as well as like what I think is beautiful about New York City, especially Brooklyn. Brooklyn has more of them than any other borough, but the adult fitness areas. Mm-hmm. So there are areas for
on my side of the park. We don't have one over by the Flatbush side.
Over by Flatbush. Well, there's also the parade ground one too, I think. Right there.
There's an adult playground.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, parade ground. Yeah. I'm never over there.
Yeah.
It's the other side of the park.
Yeah.
Still. It's like that other area.
But just an area like, so I'll be at the fitness areas and you'll just see someone coming by and just coming up to the bar and just hanging, right? Or you'll see them come do 10 pull-ups and then go about the rest of their day. And then some people stay there and work out, and they have they have individuals who do the crazy flips and all that fun stuff. But it's very unique to New York. And it's also, well, there's some other cities in the U.S. that have these spaces, but I think it's just beautiful to bring communities together.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, and it's for kids. It's risk taking, which they need. They need that in their bodies.
Yeah.
They need that in their mind. And I love the new playgrounds for the kids because they're padded enough where they're not just like flinging out on concrete.
Yeah.
But there's so much to the designs and the offerings and what they're doing, and they can have risk in that sense and not just other ways.
Yeah,
it's important.
Yeah, when COVID happened too, I was like, and all the playgrounds were shut down in New York City. I was kind of like,
that pissed me off. Ooh, I was livid. I was like, that part of it hit so hard because I'm like, you are outside. This is the only place the kids have to go. Like, and most of them are by the. Sorry, this is like the whole. I might have to edit this out, but like, most of the playgrounds are adjunct to the schools where a lot of kids were going for food, right? Because of the day and time we were all living at that point, and I'm like, that it's like. Yeah, it was like somebody said it once, oil on the playground. I was like, oh, that does not feel good. Anyway, sorry, you can edit that out.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Side note of like,
it's all how everyone had different views during COVID and
how close it was. It was like it's air outside. It's like we need some air. But anyways.
Yeah, no, we don't really edit much out in these things. Yeah, it's. I think that there is a lot of different beliefs during COVID, and to hold space for like, ideas that were not, really at the forefront of people's thoughts. I think during COVID is when I actually like really tried to form language for why I thought recreation and play was important.
Yeah.
Because that was put to the backside, and I knew in my body that it was important. I knew, you know, obviously, you know, with like how to argue why fitness is important or less, like just different things are important. But especially with play and recreation, I did a lot of research during that time too.
Yeah.
To try to bring that back to the forefront. Like, we need this for socialization. And then also my curiosity, like, going back to when they opened the playgrounds, like I was like watching the kids to see like how they would be on the monkey bars, because I was like, you know, without that breaky, like all that their arms are looking for, without that for so many months, I was very curious to see how it would, like how they would be, and like how, I mean, kids are resilient, so a lot of them pull back, but it's
also like, why are we relying on our resilience?
Right.
Enough. I mean, so I'm a mom, as we know, and you know, certain situations, schools, approaches, systems that my kids would be in, and you know, I grew up down south. Everybody was your mama, across color lines, ethnic lines, everything. It was community, and I do have that thing where it's like, I call her by baby, you know, like my kids' friends, like, hey, babe, you know. And so whenever I talk about how I would stand up for my children, it was also for others, because they, you know, it's like, if I'm doing this for my child, it's for, you know, their friends too. Like, it's just how I'm wired. It's how I was raised. And so, you know, I'd roll up and in certain ways where they were, you know, cutting quote unquote specials, which you're already calling it a special, or chess, right. You know, all these things that are really giving them this developing the whole child. Because I also have a background in early childhood education, and I work in early childhood education too still. So, you know, you're developing the whole child, the whole person, like, but you're stripping these things away that you already have labeled as specials to begin with, which is totally just no. Like, why is art a special but math is an academic? Like, yeah. And also, it's called art, like just art, you know, like what is that for you? Like, it could be so many things. As they were taking that away and then implementing more tests and things like this, it was like, you know, stop making our kids rely on their resilience. Like, it's enough already. They're gonna have to do that. This is the world they're living in. Like, just like, why add more? Like, it's messed up enough out here. Why are you adding more to it? Like, very confusing. So I would roll up. I mean, my kids would be like, "Ma, you're gonna roll up," and you know, like, you're good. I got you. But that said, the during COVID, the CDC rolled back markers for physical development. They did roll back, and then I've noticed too, like the spatial awareness of even grown-ups this day and time. It's like it's taken a turn. Yeah, it's definitely taken a turn. I with like, there was a certain point during the pandemic where we were teaching kids. So kids were brought to centers and they were given like their remote work through the center, because we had Wi-Fi for them to have access to. So it was kids who didn't have access to Wi-Fi, or their parents were essential workers. They were allowed to apply for our centers to go to daily. Okay. Amazing.
Yeah, which was wonderful.
Awesome. So thankful for you in that role. Thank you. As a mother, keeping teenagers alive to the best of my ability during that time. Thank you. Yeah.
So it was very difficult though. It was probably the hardest time that I've been through. But it was like we realized we had to become teachers, because we weren't learning from the remote situation. So we bought books to read for them. We helped them with their quizzes or their tests, and like we would do simple things of like, I would throw out all these letters and be like, okay, you got to come back with frog. So they'd like run back and they'd do teamwork to get the word frog. Yes. So we used movement as well. We placed a timeline on a wall and had them jumping each of the like humps. You know how they make the humps on the time. So they're jumping with the timeline. So we designed it more Montessori style, which was really fun to be a part of. And the kids loved it. And it just like, in a way, it kind of made me think like, oh, it'd be so nice to just start your own school.
Yes,
based with movement and
visceral learning is real. I did an amazing. Oh my gosh, this is like so like at the Armory with a colleague / friend who is a scientist. Who is an expert on soil. And it was Germaine Acogne from West Africa, a dancer and teacher. This whole company did Rites of Spring, it was?
Okay.
At the Armory. And the big part of it's on peat moss. Like the stage is peat moss.
Yeah.
And so I came together with like 1,000, it was like 1,000 middle schoolers at the Armory that day. And we had like, I can't remember how big the group was, maybe 100 middle schoolers to sit through this lecture on peat moss and the stage. And she was connecting it to like what they had just seen. It was this whole thing. So my portion of facilitating was listening with our bodies through lecture.
Okay.
So they had the freedom to move around.
Nice.
Right? So, and like, I'm like, if you need to close your eyes, I honestly, like, if you need a nap, you're a teenager. They're making you wake up way too early in this society. It's like, you need to sleep. Right, whatever. I mean, I didn't say, hey, if you need to nap, sleep. But it's like, if you need to close your eyes and listen. Like, there's so many ways that we listen with our bodies. But we have no idea that it's even a thing, or then the barriers of like, do I need to give myself permission to do that? And so it was really, I loved it. It was a very small moment in time, but very significant. It was about a year ago, I want to say. And anyways, it's that visceral learning, visual learning. Like half the time when I remember things, it's because I can remember the whole scene.
You can remember where you were.
Yeah, where I was. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can tell you what was happening. Like, that, because I was touching it. Like, that's why I remember that, it's like, but everybody has different ways of learning,
Yeah. So. Yeah. It was really cool to look into how each child was learning and how, I mean, we would have them jumping on a trampoline sometimes when they had to like, sit on a meeting.
Exactly.
Like their camera could be off.
Yeah.
But they were just, or bouncing on a Swiss ball. And then we also we made them nap. So at least like just close our eyes for 20 minutes and just like have that quiet time because in a room full of stimulation. So yeah, it was just a beautiful process.
I'm so glad. Thank you for doing that for the kids at that time especially. I mean, it's just like, wow, what kids went through.
Oh my gosh, we've talked for quite some time.
Quite a bit.
But I'm so glad that you've provided so many good points for the listeners, and I hope that they take them and run with them because you're just a wealth of knowledge, and I'm very happy to have met you. And so can you just tell the listeners where they can find you, and then I'll put it in the bio as well.
Yeah, for sure. So my website is kdmovement.space. It's the letter K, the letter D, the full word movement.space. And that's also my Instagram. You can contact me there. I usually post where I'm teaching. Honestly, I don't post a lot. I have a lot of life going on that I don't post a lot about. But I'm redoing the website at the moment just because it needed it. And it's there. You can find me. I'm based in Brooklyn. I do teach, around the world too. So that's a good way. Like if you're on the road too, I'd love to see you. Like I'm going to get to see Anna in Indonesia in February. Yes.
Beautiful.
So that's where you can find me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then can you share like one message you have for all the listeners if you were to choose just one message that you find valuable to everybody?
You told me about this part. Well, I'm not going to script that. And let's see what comes through while we're here. Keep moving and, keep holding yourself and others because it's enough out here. And just keep moving, keep undulating. Like, don't make it so linear. Honor the linear, but like really bring some undulations into it also. I guess that's it. I usually in my class was never underestimate the power of a toe drag. As they're shimmying, just to kind of be like, and we're back in your body and you're gonna walk out the door in 2 seconds. Like we're out of our transcendent zones of togetherness. Keep moving.
Yeah, I like that. And if we were in Anna's class, she would say like, what's your takeaway? My takeaway from this would definitely be the the yawning in different parts of your body. I thought that was really cool when you said that. Yeah, cool. So fun. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, love. So nice to do it.
Yes, have a nice day, everybody.
Peace, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.